Welcome everyone to Home Office Hours Live with Vistaprint. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you haven't joined us before, Home Office Hours is a series of live discussions on timely topics, and we're featuring guest speakers as well as our very own Vistaprint team members. Our goal with the series is to provide you with education and advice for getting through these uncertain times during the COVID-19 crisis. And today we have a special installment with two of our returning guests, George Goodman and Ellen Greer of Vistaprint's digital product team. So we've received a number of questions around websites and design. So we brought Ellen and George back to demonstrate the basics of setting up a Vistaprint website. We know that some of you are getting started there, and while we hope that you try our tool, the hope is that these two extremely knowledgeable folks that we have with us will be able to give you creative and design tips that are useful across the board, whether you use the Vistaprint website builder or not. So let's get into it. And George, I'll start with you. What should someone think about first when you're starting to build your website?
Well, like any good artist, you really need inspiration. And so one of the big things I recommend for people to do is to go look around the internet and just find things that they like. Mostly you might want to look at like your competition, for example, and just kind of see what they're doing. And even if they're not in your local area, just examples. So for the sake of this webinar, we're going to talk about a wedding photographer. So we'd probably go and research some other wedding photographers just to see what content do they have, what do their sites look like, what do we like, what do we feel like represents our brand. So what we're going to do is show you a couple things to pay attention to while you investigate other sites. So you can just kind of like jot down notes to yourself and say, okay, I like this, I want to bring in this element, etc. So Ellen, if you wouldn't mind pushing a slide, I'll talk us through some of those things. Okay, so the first thing to pay attention to is font. Font actually gives a lot of the style to a website. And so it's important to kind of understand the language of how you talk about font and what the sort of meanings behind it is. So the first thing is in these first two examples of George, I wanted to write my name up here 6 times so that you could really know who I was. That was the important aspect here. But if you take a look at this first example, it's demonstrating the difference between serif and sans serif fonts. So serifs are basically these little hooks on the end of the letter. And so this is a little bit more of a classical look. You'll see this in like print a lot of times, and you see it on the web as well. But it's a little bit more classical. Whereas if you look at the one to the right, it's sans serif, just meaning doesn't have serif. And you'll see that a lot more on like more modern kind of websites. So they're both valid and good, just kind of a different feeling. So that's something you should pay attention to when you're looking at fonts. In the next set of examples, there's a difference in weight. So obviously the one on the left, very, very thin. The one on the right, very heavy. What you'll traditionally see is that like heavier fonts like that will probably be used in titles. You're not likely to see a paragraph of really heavy font because it'll feel dense and it won't read easily. But you want to pay attention to how these kind of weights are used across different things. And so while the left is extremely light and the right is extremely heavy, there are steps in between in medium fonts and those kind of things. And so just pay attention generally to the weights of the font, how they're used, and what you like and what you don't like. In the third example, you can see handwritten fonts. Obviously, these are just like a totally different feel than anything else you have. And on the left, it's a really pretty cursive kind of deal. And on the right, it's, well, it looks like I hand wrote it. And certainly those give different vibes. So again, just pay attention to this sort of thing. Moving over to the right side of this slide, you can see I have a couple of color examples. Color is also super, super important in what you're conveying. So on the furthest left example, it's just monotone, blacks, whites, and grays. That's going to be pretty serious in general, and you might see on something like a news site, but it can be really, really well utilized. Moving to the right a little bit, it's more of sort of an organic feel, right? So the tones, there's color to it, but they're muted. They're not really saturated. They're not super vivid. And so this is going to give you kind of an earthy feeling. So you might see this in like a yoga studio or like a health food store or something like that. And then to the right, it's a super vivid, really bright color where you're really trying to get some pop and splash and excitement and those kinds of words. And so just kind of mark those things down, and even feel free to kind of like look at a color and copy it exactly. because it will really help you define your brand to limit your palette to certain types of colors and really stick with that stuff. Now, another thing to pay attention to is tone of voice in the writing. And at the very bottom, I've kind of demonstrated this between two pretty different examples. First one says, with 14 years of experience in the field, I bring a level of expertise that so on and so forth. It's kind of formal, it's professional, it's to the point. And below that, I say, when you're ready to meet me, let's grab a coffee and start chatting about what works for you. Obviously, this is a little bit more of a conversation with somebody, and it's something you might say out loud when you're just face-to-face. And so they just craft a different feeling and vibe for someone who's reading your website. And you can see how in this case, I've actually reinforced the tone by choosing a different font. I'm not sure if I would really go with this handwriting font just for my personal taste, to tell you the truth, but you can see how like these elements are working together to create this feeling of, it's not super formal, it's casual, it's like, you know, a person I might just go have a cup of coffee with or a beer with, you know, just kind of down to earth. And so those are kind of the things you want to pay attention to. Now, not pictured on this slide, just one more thing to keep in mind. You want to pay attention to like the use of photography. Are people using like single images, like really large hero images as they're called, with like people in it? Or are they using things that are like more like illustrations and sort of drawings? And what do you like? What do you want to bring in? Obviously, in the case of a wedding photographer, we're going to be focused on photography because that's just the core component, but you might make a different choice depending on your business.
Okay.
So all those are kind of the things to pay attention to as you're researching other people's websites. So the next thing, once you sort of have your brand and, you know, maybe you're pulling this from your old stuff, like maybe you already have a logo and you've sort of got this together. The next thing to think about is like the user journey of this website and what's the purpose of it? Why do you have it? So in our case, as a wedding photographer, we have this because we want to generate contacts. We want someone talking to us and saying, hey, we want to use your services and we want to book you. So the best way we can do that is just basically like starting a conversation. So we're going to build our entire website around that concept of drawing someone in to contacting us. So let's put ourselves in the shoes of the visitor for a moment. And let's think, what do they need to know in order to contact us? Well, as a wedding photographer, the first thing they're going to probably want to do is see your photos. So we know we need some sort of portfolio because we know that they need to say, okay, yes, you're good at your core job, which is delivering photos. That's important to me. They're also going to probably want to know something about your services. Like, for example, do you do engagement photos or are you only day of? Do you stick around for the after party? And so there's some minimal stuff they're going to be curious about there. Another thing that everyone's always curious about is price.
Yeah, we get a question a lot, honestly. Should you put that price right out there on your site? You know that people are interested, but should you put it right there?
I wish there was a silver bullet to that question, but there is not. But there are some considerations. The first thing is, how important is price in your positioning in the market? So for example, if you're the type of photographer who gets most of your work because you're just half the price of everyone else, you should definitely lead with that because that's a major value prop. And you're saying, look, you can go spend this much money with everyone else, or you can spend this much with me. And if that's your position in the market, then absolutely make sure that that's front and center for people to realize. But if you're not competing on price, which is totally valid, then you may withhold it in order to generate the contact because it might get you some intrigue. But also beware that that could put people off. They might think you're trying to like hide your pricing. So in that vein, it could be bad. You're gonna have to know your market to answer that. But I will also offer sort of a hybrid approach when you think about photography in particular. So as a wedding photographer, it sort of costs you the same if you're doing photos for a wedding for 4 hours at this place versus that place. But the difference is maybe like travel expenses. One place is further away, so you got to travel, you have to like get a hotel to stay there and those kind of things. And that can really cause a lot of differences in pricing. And so you need to factor that in. What you could do is say something like, our base rate is this much, and then we have additional fees like this if they're needed, and contact us to talk more. And that's generally like approach that I think would work well for a photographer who's not competing on price.
Awesome. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So all that said, I think we've sort of identified what we want our style to be like, what our visitor needs to know in order to generate this contact, and we're pretty much ready to jump into wireframing up a site to get that to happen.
Awesome. Well, Ellen, take it away. Go ahead and share your screen.
All right. Hey there, folks. My name is Ellen Greer. I work really closely with George here at Vistaprint in the digital division, and we both work on the Vistaprint website builder. So today we're going to show you how practically to build and design some of those things that George was talking about in terms of your brand as well as your user journey. The things we're showing you should work in practically any website builder. This is exactly how they work with the Vistaprint website builder. So what I'm going to show you first is a practice that's called wireframing, basically putting the major pieces in place, getting everything out there, moving things around as you see fit, but making sure that at minimum you have a certain amount built. And then later we're going to do the beautifying, polishing part. I don't know about you, but I could spend forever like playing with colors and adjusting details. So we're going to do that second. We're going to get everything in place first. So here we are in the builder. This is our homepage. So you can see that we have a global header block, we have a body block, and we have a global site footer. So the first thing that we want to do is drive towards that primary action that we know we want users to take, which is contacting us. So we're going to add a big piece of text and then a big button right here on the homepage to make it easy for people to contact us the minute they land on our site. So we could say, contact me or get in touch or, give us a call. But if I'm thinking about the tone of voice of a wedding photographer, I might phrase it a little bit more like, make us a part of your wedding journey. Yeah. And then next, we're going to just below that add a button. So this button is ultimately going to link over to like a contact us page or a get in touch page. And actually, let me build that. So here we are in edit pages. Right now, we only have one home page. We're going to add a second page. And I am going to make it a contact type page, and I'm going to call it get in touch. All right. So here's our get in touch page. It says contact us, there's this contact form here, and there's this text. So the first thing I want to do is give people my phone number. So give us a call at 867-5309, not my actual phone number. Something really cool that you can do with phone numbers on your website is you can hyperlink them to like an actual phone number. 867-5309. And what this means is that anyone on their phone, they see your phone number, they can click on it, and immediately it's like, do you want to call this number? And you say yes, and then you can make the call. So hyperlinking to a real phone makes this number clickable and callable from a mobile device, which is great. And then over here in the contact form, this is a good start. But as a photographer, I also want my couple's phone number, and I want to know the date of their wedding, because if I'm already booked for another event on that day, like it's just a no-go. So I do need to know that up front. So pardon me, that was fast. So here's the contact form. You can click settings, and over here are existing form fields. I'm going to add a new field, which is phone, and I'm going to make it required. And then I'm going to add another field, which is the date selector, and I'm going to call it date of wedding. And I'm also going to make it required. Okie dokie. So I've saved those, and here's my contact form. So when my site is live on the web, one of my prospective customers can put in their info right here and submit it, and that'll send me an email to my email address. Actually, I can show you. So here in the settings, you can send it to the standard email on the account, or if there's another email you want to use, you can put it in right there. You can also change the submit and success messages. Okay, so we have a contact form and we have a contact us page, and this is great. The next thing that we know that we want to happen, so we've built out our primary goal. You can contact me. The other things George talked about were a portfolio and services and price. So let's do a portfolio page next. So I'm going to add another page, and let's just do the blank page type, and I'm going to call it portfolio. So here's our portfolio page. You can see it added itself to navigation right there. I know I want to put some photos here. So something I'm going to do is this on the left is the blocks menu. We have a bunch of kind of pre-designed blocks that you can use, and I'll show you more of these later. But first, I'm just going to grab one of these blank blocks, drop it right there, and I want to add a place to show my photos. So here I'm adding an element. I'm going to go down to media. I could add one image, but I'm a photographer, so I have a lot of photos I want to share. So I'm going to go over to one of these media galleries. We have a couple options, and I think I like this one. So now here I am in the My Images drawer, and I can select any of these images that I previously uploaded to go into that media gallery, or I could upload more if I needed to. For now, I'm going to select these 4 and then go over to Manage Media, and I want to reorder them. I think this one I want to be first, and the night one I want to be second, and I'm going to delete these guys and save my changes. So this is my media gallery, and I like it. If a visitor is coming to my site, they look at these photos and they're like, oh my God, I love this photographer. I really want to book them. I want them to really easily, without having to think about it or without much effort, to basically frictionlessly be able to contact me. So actually I'm going to add another block right here above the site footer. And that's going to say, you know, get in touch with us for a custom quote, and then a button, and then that's going to link to the contact page. So let's go to our popular blocks. I'm just going to grab this one because it's pretty close to what I want. Contact us for a custom quote for your special day. Okay, I don't need this paragraph. I don't need this image. I do want a button right there. And this button is going to say, contact us, and I'm going to hyperlink it internally to the Get in Touch page. Okay, actually, I'm going to rename this Get in Touch so it's consistent with my page title. And you know what? I had something similar on the home page. I'm going to go set that up right now before I forget. There's nothing worse than an unlinked button. So Get in Touch and link internally to the Get in Touch page. Cool. So that's really easy, both from my home page and from my portfolio page. They scroll down. Oh, I do want a custom quote. I can click this button and that takes them immediately to our Get in Touch page, where they can either fill out the contact form or give us a phone call. Okay, so we have a portfolio. The next thing we want to do is talk about services. So I'm going to add one more page. And let's also do a blank page type, and I'm going to call it Photo Services. All right, so this is my services page, and the main things I want to do are talk about the primary services I offer. Let's see if there's any designed blocks that fit my needs. So you can see there's options built in for like menu items for a restaurant, for like packages, like if you do tech services or consulting services, a lot of details, you could use these. More menus, more services. But what I like about this one is that you can show a photo above each one. And as a photographer, I really want my site to be photo driven. So I'm going to drag this block right here. And the main services that our wedding photographers offer are engagement day, like a short wedding day, and a long wedding day. So I'm going to call this engagement, wedding day 4 hours, and wedding day 8 hours. And now I'm going to add some photos. So let's change this to one of my other images. Let's do the hands, because engagements are all about the hands and the rings. For the wedding day, let's do my images. Let's do this one. I think that one's really nice. Okay. Beautiful. And then for this one, the longer, I want to show like a wedding photo where they're at the after party because that's going to be a longer day. So let's go like that. And I'm going to adjust the crop and save changes. Neato. So here you could add more text. That's going to be a description of exactly what happens during a wedding day shoot. Obviously, you're going to customize these on your own. And I don't actually need these buttons, so I'm going to delete each one because they're not necessary. However, if someone reading about the services I offer wants to contact me for a quote, I want them to really easily be able to do that, just like over on the portfolio page. So let me hop back to portfolio because I'm going to reuse that block I created. So here I am on portfolio. Here's my contact us for a custom quote for your special day block. And I'm going to duplicate this block, and I'm going to duplicate that over to the photo services page. Okay, so there it is, right where I wanted it, below these guys and above the footer. So ultimately, this is most of the content on our site. We have a home page, we have get in touch with us, we have a portfolio, we have photo services, and those were the main questions that we think our user wants to answer in order to be able to feel comfortable calling us. So hopefully by providing this much content on the website, we've been able to remove those barriers and make them feel really excited and really confident that there's a potential fit and it's a great idea to get in touch and potentially book us. So we could publish now or not. And now I'm going to direct things back to George.
Right, George, tell us about beautifying the site.
Yeah. So one thing I do want to call out to everyone who's watching is like, we know that we went through this process of build out pretty fast. And so to some degree, it's hard to keep up with all of the ins and outs of our particular UI. What we hope you're paying attention to is the thought process we're using to build this. And we do have training materials to show you how to actually use our website builder in detail. So if you feel like you're missing like little elements of, oh, how did you change that image? It's okay. We can make sure that you get connected to material to show you how to do that stuff. But for now, we really want you focusing on like how we're thinking about doing this and not be too concerned about the tool working itself. So I just wanted to call that out.
Actually, we can send out any links that you would like in the follow-up email. I know that you have a YouTube playlist that walks through this in a lot of detail. So that and anything else that you would like to be sent out afterwards, we can absolutely send that in a follow-up email.
Great.
Thanks,
yeah,
Corey. That would be perfect.
Yeah. Okay, so fortunately, I have done a little bit of prep work for beautifying the site because I think as a wedding photographer, image is really important, like the whole feeling of everything, because we want people to feel like we're going to capture their moment in a special way. So it's important for us to make this look pretty good. So I look at this and immediately think a couple things. Well, we've done all this research and we figured out our fonts that we want, and we haven't actually yet selected our fonts, right? We just built all this out. So the first thing we're going to do is go over to our font drawer and select our fonts for the site. Ellen, the font name, which is a pairing, you can see if you scroll down, we have a bunch of pairings for you to help you visualize what they would look like. The one we're looking for is Playfair Display and Fauna 1. And it's a little bit way down there, but it's not super far. I picked this one because I thought it was a good, representation of having some class. There we go. Using the serif fonts in a way that I felt like still looked kind of modern, but also, you know, was refined and showed some elegance. So I don't know, it was just what I liked. Okay, so now I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, yes?
Real fast, can you talk for a hot second about how many fonts your website should have?
Oh, that's a good idea. Would you like to talk for a hot second about how many fonts your website should have?
Sure. Spoiler alert, the answer is 2. Or even 1. I think when you have 2 fonts, for example, over here on the services page, you know, when you have multiple fonts, what that really allows you to do is to distinguish some items from others, like distinguish titles from paragraphs and so forth. If you have more than 2 fonts, things can get a little crazy. The hierarchy can get too complex. Visually, it can kind of be a bit overwhelming. I have seen some websites that have many, many fonts or multiple fonts within a paragraph or a sentence, and it's just not as professional. For modern website building, we always recommend having 2 fonts, one for your title, one for your paragraph, not 7, not 1.
Yeah, and I think it's important to understand that rules can be broken, but what we're giving you is like the really good guidelines to start from. And once you've mastered foundations, then there's always sometimes reasons to break rules, but these are like really good, solid guidelines to start with. And I think, yeah, having one for headlines, having one for paragraphs, that's a pretty good way to handle this. Okay, so looking back at this page again, the fact that the button is center aligned, but the text is left aligned feels weird to me. I think those 2 things need to be together. So, okay, so now I'm looking at like what we've considered the most important thing, which is getting someone to get in touch. This is also the homepage. This is where they're gonna land. So this is like the first thing they're gonna see. So what I want as a photographer is a really, really eye-catching image that's just like this big thing that they see. Fortunately, we have already uploaded an image here. And so what we're gonna do is add an image to the background that we think represents our unique photography particularly well. And beautiful. Okay. So I'm looking at this and it's a little bit hard to read right now, and I'm not really seeing as much of the image as I would like. There's more of this image like towards the top and the bottom that I want. So what we're gonna do is set a minimum height on this, and we're gonna make it 600 pixels tall. All this is really doing is just saying that no matter what device someone uses for, this is gonna be at least 600 pixels tall. And now you can see, okay, it's showing much more of the image. Yeah.
You can see the whole dress.
That's probably an important part. Yeah, I think we should show the dress. But we have another problem. Now we can't see her face. The button is perfectly covering their face in the kiss, and we probably don't want that. So what we're gonna do is go to this column, and we're gonna change it so that instead of being at the top, it aligns everything in the center. Boom. Okay, now we're looking better. Now we have a nice image, and we're seeing stuff, but still a little bit hard to read. So what I wanna do is change this overlay. The overlay is that little white gloss you kind of see. What it's doing is it's making the text easier to read because, Ellen, why don't you remove the overlay entirely for a second and let's just show what that would look like. So go to 100% on the transparency and you can see now I can't read the text at all. And that's definitely a problem. So the overlay is basically reducing the contrast so that we can read it better. So we're gonna go back in and put the overlay in again. And let's make it black this time. Okay, and then yep, drop the transparency down. Let's keep dropping. Let's go to like 40%. Something like that. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, so let's click in. Okay, now we can read the text, but we're not losing the image. You could fiddle with this a little bit to get it to your liking, but this is the general idea.
50%.
Okay, so I think the button being blue, it jumps out, but I'm not sure blue is in our color palette. What we would probably want to do is have like an accent color that we use everywhere. We haven't really established a color paradigm yet because we've mostly stayed in monotones for this. So I think what we'll do is make this image, this button color black. I think you just got to click into the button. Well, yeah, this will set it everywhere. So we're going to set globally black buttons. Great. Okay. So the next thing that's noticeable is we don't actually have a logo. So you don't know who we are yet. Fortunately, we've taken care of this. We've already uploaded a logo. So we're going to add this to our top left. Fantastic wedding photo. I was truly inspired when I made this logo. So there's actually this tendency, we see this all the time. People want their logo to be the biggest thing on the page. It really shouldn't be. It's a supporting detail because to your visitor, Your logo is only as important as letting them know where they are. But at the end of the day, you love it, but they're more concerned about like your photography and those sort of things. So what we want to do is not make it such a prominent element on the page, but just enough so you know where you are. So we're going to shrink it down a pretty good bit.
How's that, George?
That looks good. Okay, so now because we put this over to the left side, the navigation feels a little bit weird because it's sitting in the center of that column. So instead, we're going to move it over to the right side. And now we have an element on each side, and this looks a little bit better. Yeah, I think that's good. Okay, so what we've done is basically made the landing page look a lot nicer, where you've landed, you know that you're on a wedding page, you know that you want, that we want you to get in touch with us, and you kind of have a feeling for what our photography is and who we are. One additional thing we might actually add to this page is kind of a why us section, right? We didn't really do this so much in the wireframing because it's not technically necessary. But at the same time, you might have something that you really, really want to call out about your services. Like maybe you do something that's particularly different. So let's add one more block to the bottom, just a title and text, and let's just do like a little why choose us.
What are we called? Fantastic wedding photo.
Yeah. Great. We can, yeah.
The premier casual wedding photo company in the, I don't know, Maryland area, etc.
We got a typo, but yeah, but hopefully this demonstrates the point. Okay, so we're almost done with our home page, except we have the site footer that's still blank. So thinking about the footer, this is just like the header. These show up on every page. So let's go back to thinking what's important to be on every page. We want people contacting us. So a good thing to do here is to add our phone number, and underneath that to add our email address. Now we could just link them to the contact page. That's also another thing. We could repeat the navigation. There's a lot of stuff you could do. In this case, we're just going to put our phone number and an email address. Maybe someone wants to send us something directly. And now we can know that this is just going to follow them around the site everywhere they go.
Once again, I'm going to hyperlink this phone number, 867-5309. And then I'm going to do a similar thing with the email. So anyone coming to your site, can just click on that email address, and then that'll immediately open up their email application. So I think it was something like email@fantasticweddingphoto.com. Cool.
Okay, and then Ellen, will you copy and paste that paragraph text a few times so that we get some wrapping text?
This?
Yeah. I want to demonstrate line height because I think it's something that makes a big difference in design that doesn't get a lot of thought. But, okay, that's blank. So line height is the space between each line break. So every time it goes down one. So let's highlight all that text and then let's set it to 2. Let's go a little more. Let's do 2.3 or something. Okay, so you can see how it creates more space. Ultimately, what this is doing is it's actually making it a little bit easier to read because when things are really condensed, they feel heavier. That doesn't mean you want to put a ton of line height in for everything. It's just when you have these larger paragraphs in general, it's good to give enough space in between so someone doesn't feel like they're reading like a really dense novel. You want them to feel like everything they're reading is quick and informative, and you really don't want to belabor the point because let's face it, people spend almost no time on websites. They're in and out and they're bounced into the next one. So you really got to be snappy with everything you do. And this is a small little trick to kind of help that. In general, it's really important to pay attention to not crowding space and giving things, area to live on their own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, speaking of that, George, I'm kind of feeling like this big paragraph is really close to the edge, and I kind of want to add more padding to make it like a little narrower and make it feel more like a magazine column. What do you think about adding more side padding to the column?
Yeah, I think that's a good call. I agree with you.
Let's make this, I don't know, like 30. Okay, close enough. And then this one on the left is going to be 32. Neato. Yeah, so there's just a little bit more breathing room between the left edge of the text and the left edge of the website and vice versa.
Yeah. So let's take a quick look over the whole page now and just see, is there anything else standing out to us that, you know, we could do something like change the size of the navigation or the font, but honestly, I kind of like it. I think it's good. It's simple. It feels like it's appropriately sized. The most important thing. Go ahead.
No, finish your thought, George.
The most important thing is jumping out to me, which is the button, which is getting people there, and the navigation, which should help them. You know, something you could choose to do is you could build a whole nother section below that header that's just another form of navigation. Like maybe you have a picture that says get in touch, a picture that says portfolio, a picture that says photo services, and ultimately they just link over to the other page. That's something you could do, but it's like not really necessary, right? Simple and to the point is kind of what this site is getting across. And what we're hoping this is demoing is like, you actually don't have to overcook this stuff. You can get something pretty simple and live to do the job quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with your instinct to offer like multiple paths to get where you want to go. Like you want to make it as easy as possible for your users to reach their goal. So offering them multiple paths makes it really easy. But yeah, that could be overcooking. George, one thought I had is I wonder if it makes sense to change one of the block backgrounds between these guys so that there is some distinction, you know, like between the footer and this big thing, or if you think it should all be white.
Totally a stylistic choice. For me as a wedding site, I like there being a lot of white on it. People wear white dresses and stuff. So I guess that was like a subconscious decision I made earlier. But you know, all those things are just like completely stylistic choices.
Yeah.
Separation of information is important, and you could do that. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I'll leave it for now.
Yeah. Corey, we'll leave it to you, but do you want us to move on to doing another page and talking through it, or should we take some questions? What would you like to see?
I think we have a few more minutes to move on to creating another page. And actually, thank you for the prompt. I missed my little spiel at the beginning that I usually give, that we will be taking questions and answers at the end. I see we have a few already. We'll take those, let's say in about 5 or 6 minutes. Maybe we can take the next few minutes to walk through creating additional pages. And one more note, if you are joining us on Facebook Live, you can comment your questions there. We'll get those in the Q&A in Zoom. So take us off to creating another page, and in about 5 or so minutes, we'll start taking those questions.
Okay, let's look at the get in touch page, because I think this is, as we said, a really important page for us. And right now, I think if I look at this page holistically, look at how the phone number is like really tiny in comparison to the form, and it creates this really weird imbalance of like the form is all the way on the left side and going super far down, and then there's just nothing below it. So I think what we should do is take this text and we should move it above the form and delete the column that it's in right now, so that we go full span all the way across everything.
Do you want it to go here or just below contact us?
Dealer's choice.
Okay, I'm going to do contact us.
Yep. So then we're going to remove that. And now everything goes full across. And let's center align that call us stuff. And maybe bump it up a bit bigger too.
Agreed. Let's do 20. How does that look compared to contact us?
Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. And we probably want to give a little space between that and the form. The form feels like it's kind of right up on there. So I think, yeah, a little padding to the top of that.
All right.
Okay, that's looking better.
Mm-hmm.
Ellen, I remember you saying something about you thought you wanted to bring an image in. Is that something you still want to do, or did you have an idea of where you want to put it?
Yeah. So I feel like if someone's contacting you, they should know who you are. So it might make sense to like throw in, not like a gigantic photo, but like a small photo of like, I'm the photographer. So something we could do, I don't know if this is going to be the exact location, but we could add an image. This is our photographer. We're going to do the whole thing. Ooh, that's huge. Okay. No, that's not a good spot for it ultimately, but something like a picture of the photographer here on the page.
Yeah, I think if we were going to do that, what we would want to do to balance it a little bit, because you can see what it's doing is creating a lot of white space that just sort of feels empty. And now we have a center aligned text that's not really center aligned with the form below it. So we would probably end up doing something like left aligning all of this and moving it around a little bit. There is another concept I want to kind of showcase that this picture brings up. If you'll go over to the services page, this is just something that I see a lot of customers do that I think is just something to be aware of. So if you look at these images, you notice they're all squares, and that's really good for creating uniformity. But obviously it crops out part of your picture. And so there's this natural instinct people have that's like, I have to show the whole picture. But what I want to do is open up one of these and show a different cropping ratio and show why the squares kind of make this nice consistent thing. So let's just do, yeah, custom, or let's just mix them up a little bit. So what this cropper does is it lets you set your own aspect ratio if you want to. So you can shape the images any way you want, but we give you presets to try to help you create consistency.
How's that?
Great. Okay, so see what's happened now is we broke our line. We had this perfect straight line going across from engagement to wedding day, 8 hours, and now that's broken. And consistent line is generally a really good principle to bring in through all art. And we've lost it just because we didn't have the right shape. And so the same thing actually kind of exists. Can you undo that, Ellen?
Yeah.
The same thing kind of exists also in our text. Like we wrote description, which obviously is not a full description of something, but now when you look across, you see this big giant white space that's empty underneath it versus all this full text to the right. And that's just sort of like generally displeasing the eye. It's not the worst thing in the world if it's not line for line perfect, like that's okay. But generally, if you're seeing this much white space across and everything else is really full, it's just not that pretty to look at.
We can get like kind of close.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so now this looks better, and it's really because the top lines of those images are lining up across, the bottom lines of those images are lining up across, the text is lining up across. And so you have this really nice horizontal line sort of going across the entire site. So alignment and those sort of things are really important in visuals. And I believe that hit us at our 5-minute mark.
Yeah, the only thing, if I could have like one more second.
Absolutely, go ahead.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that particularly for a photographer, I think wedding captions are useful. So for example, here, like if we go to edit this image, we could add a title, like, I don't know what their names are. You know, Deandra and Frank, you know, 2019. November 2019, you know, something like that. If you wanted to have a description, you could. But what that means is that your customers, if you want them to, could see like how recent some of these photos are, or more information about them, or whatever it may be. So just optional. I think photo captions are a cool thing that could be useful to a lot of businesses.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you both so much, Ellen, George. This is great stuff. I am going to start taking our questions. If you have questions, you can use the Q&A button at the bottom if you're on Zoom. And again, if you're on Facebook, you can just comment your question there and we'll get those in the Zoom Q&A. So our first question here is actually one I can answer, which is whether this will be recorded and sent out after the webinar. And yes, it will. So we will record this and we'll make sure it's included in that follow-up email. So that was a quick one. We have another question here. Ellen, would love if you can take this one because I know you've talked about this on some of our other webinars. Can you post Zoom sessions or Facebook Live on Vistaprint websites? So like if you're doing an online class or a session like that, can you get that on the site?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple ways to do that. Let me see. I can share my screen again briefly. So let me add one more page to like show how to do cool stuff. So something that you can do for sure is you can bring your Facebook page onto the site. So for example, we have this like Facebook timeline and text block. And what this is going to do is when it loads, this is Facebook. Oh my goodness. And so you could, well, this is very meta. Streaming Facebook Live via Facebook Live from your Facebook page, and you bring a Facebook page element onto your site, someone can be on your site and like watch that video. So that's pretty cool. The way that you would change this is you'd put in the URL for your own Facebook page. So this doesn't work for like personal profiles, but it does for like a business page. So for example, let's say that your small business was the NBA. I don't know. Oh my God, they have videos too. You can pull that onto your site. And then in terms of linking to like a Zoom meeting or that kind of thing, let's say that you have a personal meeting room URL, whether it's for Zoom or WebEx or GoToMeeting or any of those, but there's a consistent URL that you use all the time. Something that you could do is you could add a button. Let's do the same style button as all our others. And then you could hyperlink that to an external link. And let's say that this is, webex.com / US / whatever your unique meeting ID is. I don't know what it is. Pretend that's a correct link, open in a new tab and save changes. And so what that would mean is that, join my meeting room. When someone clicks this, they'd be able to join that right away. I will say for security, if you are linking to like a meeting URL that you use all the time, it's a really good idea to have unique meeting passwords that you change either for every meeting or daily or as frequently as you can. And then something my mom does for her work is she set up the waiting room function. So as the meeting host, she only allows people into her meeting, like when they show up and she sees them and she recognizes the name. And those are some ways that you can avoid, interrupters.
This is awesome. Thank you, Ellen. George, let's throw it over to you for our next one. We get this one a lot. I just published my site, but when I search for it on Google, I'm not able to find it. What's going on there?
Well, there's a couple things. It depends on how you're searching. First of all, what has to happen is Google has something called crawlers. And so Google is doing all the indexing and they're just, it sounds kind of what it sounds like. They're like crawling around the internet and they're indexing stuff. And so when you first register a domain, it's not like Google instantly knows about it. It actually takes a little bit of time for it to find it. There is a whole world of SEO that we may have talked about before that sort of helps with that stuff. But usually there's always a delay between like when you publish and when you actually show up on Google. Hypothetically, you should be able to search your domain name and you should come up pretty quickly. But if you're like a wedding photographer, let's say we just published that and all we had was wedding photography Maryland, and you search that, there's a lot of sites probably ranking for that right now that are going to show up above you because they've been around longer, they have better SEO potentially, and Google just doesn't know about you. They're generally grading on things like how many sites link to you, how often do people come to your site, and how long do they stay on their site. And so they have this whole ranking system of like little checkpoints you kind of have to hit to determine where they're going to serve your site. So unfortunately, it's a little bit of a waiting game when you publish, but what I would say is publish, get your URL and start sending it to people and try to get them to visit it as fast as possible. And that'll help, Google recognize you a bit.
Yeah, like everyone in the world waits a while to, start showing up higher and higher on Google. Even the biggest companies, whenever they have a brand new website, it takes a little time to get indexed. And George was talking about cross-posting. Like if you're part of a local chamber of commerce, getting yourself listed in that directory, like that right there, that's a cross-post. Someone else's website has a link to your website, and you can do vice versa. So those are some easy ways to start to improve your search engine optimization.
Awesome tips, guys. Thank you. Our next question here, actually about costs. I'll let you decide who will take this one. So what are the costs in regards to a Vistaprint website, maintenance, etc.?
There's a number of packages. So we have a basic package, which is $5 a month. And like this is basically all of our packages are all inclusive. So the hosting and the website builder and all that stuff is included. So all you really have to do is just kind of like build like what we did and then click the publish button. The basic package comes with a branded domain, which means you'll get like whatever mybusiness.com, mybusiness.vistaprintdigital.com. The standard packages and premium packages come with non-branded domains. So like whatever, mybusiness.com, whatever's available that you can register. And I am pretty sure right now we actually have a sale on our standard package. I think it's like 50% off. So something worth looking into for sure if you're looking to pick up one of our packages.
Awesome, thank you. Our next question here is pretty unique, and Ellen, I think you actually did a little bit of looking some things up in regards to HIPAA. So I'm going to toss this question to you. How do you link to special HIPAA pages like refill your prescription and an e-commerce catalog to a basic site?
Ooh, that's a great question. So anything where you are working with like a customer or a patient's PII or personally identifiable information is really sensitive. So whether it's their like home address or social security number or like health information, that stuff has to be super secure. The Vistaprint website builder is not designed for doctors. We don't have, hospital level security or bank level security. We're really streamlined for, more your average small business owner. So if you are working with a service that is not ours, that does have that HIPAA level or bank level of protection for things like sensitive health information or sensitive banking information, that's definitely going to be in a separate place than the Vistaprint website builder, right? So you can link back and forth to those in a couple ways. Like I showed you earlier with like the Zoom or the WebEx link, you can certainly hyperlink a button. Other things you can do are like add links to external pages as part of your navigation. And as always, offer multiple paths, but definitely keep that secure stuff in the secure place and link back and forth as much as possible. George, do you have anything you want to add?
Just to point out that like, this is pretty specific to our contact forms. In general, like Vistaprint puts a lot of effort into making sure your data as our customer is really, really secure. But like our contact form feature in the builder, that's somewhere you don't really want to put like, financial information or social security. And that's probably true with most contact forms. Like that's not going to be unique to us. That's just something you want to be really, really careful about. So if you take that stuff, it should be from any company who's designed specifically to handle that. Just because like really sensitive stuff and, you need to be able to just keep everyone safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like this information gets emailed to you, so you never want to like ask someone for their social security and then have that emailed. Like that's just not secure. It's making yourself a target for potential hackers.
Really helpful. Thank you, guys. Our next question here is about e-commerce. So George, maybe you can start us with this one. If you have products in addition to services that you want to make available for purchase on your website, is there an e-commerce compatibility? If so, Shopify, is that, for example, compatible?
Shopify is kind of its own unique thing. So if you were to use Shopify, you would probably just start a Shopify store and your website would be created through that as well. We do have the capability for people to sell products on our website with a PayPal button. So we can basically say, here is whatever the item is, and you can set your price and your shipping amount and that sort of thing. This is actually something we're actively looking into expanding a little bit more because we get this question a lot. But for right now, you can do pretty basic stuff like this and sell through PayPal.
Awesome, thank you. And actually, this is a subsequent question that we've got here. I would like to know how to add payment methods to your checkout experience. PayPal, Venmo, PayPal, credit, debit, credit cards, and other payment methods.
Okay, the way that that's done right now is you can only use PayPal through what we just showcased. But what we do have is something, we call it the HTML pip, but it's under our content thing. And what that lets you do is allows you to insert any kind of arbitrary HTML and JavaScript that you want. So for example, something we've seen before is there's an e-commerce company called Ecwid. And what Ecwid does is they basically let you create a store and you can embed that store into anything. So what you would do is you would go to like Ecwid's site, you would make a web store, and then they would give you a little piece of code and you would just embed it in here. When you do that, it'll present your entire store in here and you can kind of build the frame around it as you want to with our builder. And from that point, you would be setting up all your payment options through Ecwid because we're basically just displaying it. But all of the actual e-commerce functionality of like the cart and that sort of thing are coming from Ecwid. This is something we're looking into expanding more ourselves. But generally right now, if you're trying to do that, you're gonna have to use some sort of third party to handle your e-commerce solution if you're not satisfied with the PayPal solution as is.
Okay, thank you. So we have just a couple more minutes left, so I'm going to take just one more question and then we're going to close it out. So for our last question, how do I get my buttons to the top of the page instead of the side of the page?
There's a couple ways to do that. Ellen, I guess you should probably just keep sharing. I don't want to show you the wrong thing. So if we can get the website afterwards, we can make sure we give you the right information. But let's just show how to move a button at all. Let's start there. So yeah, basically there's a move tool right there. It's on every single piece of content. You can just click that. And now you see all these plus buttons pop up and you can click any one of these plus buttons and it should put the button there. If that's not working for you for some reason, do let us know. We can help you. Yeah, it's a lot of text for that skinny space. We can help you figure that out. So do let us know. But this should work for you.
Yeah, the website looks temporarily crazy, while you're in the middle of the moving process, but this is just showing you different drop zones for where the button can go.
Right, thank you. So we're going to wrap it up for today. Thank you so much, George and Ellen, for coming back and fleshing out this really important process for our customers. I think this was excellent, so thank you.
Sure thing. And I might underscore one last thing. Sorry, I should have.
Sure, absolutely. I was going to ask you guys for your final thoughts. So let's do those now. George, let's start with you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as it relates to like that move thing, like don't forget that we have all this material that shows you how to use the foundational basics of the builder, and we'll be sending that to you in a follow-up email I have just learned during the session. So if you do have other questions, things like moving things around and creating spaces, all of that is solved and in such a pleasant way by our own Ellen. So do look out for that.
Thank you. Ellen, any final thoughts that you'd like to leave the audience with today?
Yeah, just two quick ones. Number one, publish. Don't forget to publish your website. So all your latest changes are live on the web. Publish, publish, publish. The publish button, at least for us, is this big green publish button here on the left. So definitely publish your site. You can preview it too, but always publish so that your latest changes do go live on the web. And then the other thing I was going to say is that y'all saw that in less than an hour, with a fair amount of forethought and planning, but honestly in less than an hour, plus some chit chat, George and I were able to put together a website that could enable a new wedding photography business to start operating and start collecting customers, right? Start collecting leads. So I promise you, it's not as hard and scary as it looks. We really try and make it easy for you with our builder. as do many others, but I just want to end with the thought that you can absolutely do this. You can.
Well, thank you both so much. And thank you to the audience for your time and your questions. We are going to be having these every Tuesday and Thursday. If you've joined us before, you know there's a survey at the end. We really want your help with these. We want to make sure that they're as valuable for you as they can be, and we want to know what you want to hear. So please do fill out that survey at the end. It's very quick, I promise. And you can also send follow-up questions to homeofficehours@vistaprint.com, as well as requests for other sessions that you would like to see us cover. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. Always feel free to shout out topics that you would like us to cover there as well. And next Tuesday, you can tune in. We're going to talk about leveraging online video in the new reality. So as George said, we will send a follow-up email out. We'll have some resources about using the website builder. And we're going to close this one out for today. Thank you, everyone. This has been Home Office Hours Live with Vistaprint.